Hey everybody, good morning, happy Friday, and welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Anne, and disembodied hands, Quindy, Justin, and sometimes John. How are you going? How are you doing? How you somethinging? I don't know, it's one of those mornings. I was doing a lot before I came online, and my brain is still like over there. So, what was I going to say? I was going to say that I put Crimson Herald down on the page, not because I necessarily think we have any more work to do on him, but because I didn't know if Justin was actually going to change the screen title if he sees my text. So, yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, it was kind of having a moment, Quindy. Hold on, let me run another speed test. It was just at 14, so it should be all right. I'm running it again. It is going to be a real bummer if this doesn't get fixed. Right? He changed it. Good. Awesome. Super then. We'll keep Crimson Herald around just because he's fun to look at. But yeah, we're starting Mr. Gnoll today. It's exciting. Let's get on to that. And I'm going to do finish up my speed test here, guys. Make sure I'm okay. It's going to stutter just a little. What is it with this time of morning? Like, ridiculous. Seriously. I'm at over 4, but I should be at 34. And that's what I'm really kind of having issues with here with Comcast. I'm feeling like I need to like actually have David call them. Because it's getting a little bit too regular here. So let me just do it one more time. But be assured if there are issues with the stream, it is most likely on my end, not on yours, guys. I don't know why it's doing this all of a sudden. Like, we had many months of, or at least a couple months of perfectly good streaming with only one weirdness. My download is also lower than it should be. Holding at 5, which is not stellar and not even close to what I should be at, but it's doable, I guess. All right. Well, that's where we are. If we have an issue, then I'll go and check it again. So, all right, let's just jump in. So today, we have a Gnoll. So my question for y'all is, should we use Gnoll pelts? Or should we do something else? Oh yeah, definitely. Yesterday was like 1 megabyte upload speed per second. It was ridiculous. We pay for like 35, so this is just like not adequate. And 5 is like, you know, minimum, and it's right around 4 to 5 right now. So yeah, hopefully it'll turn around, Quindy. I don't know. If you see me suddenly like freeze frame, then you know that my internet, that Comcast has struck again. So what do you guys think today? What are you feeling? What are you feeling on this Gnoll? Let's see. Let's isolate. Sometimes it helps when considering colors to look at how many other colors are you going to have to come up with on the model that you're painting. This is a Bones USA, by the way. Decided to go off script because I needed a villain. The only villain I had was like Bones USA. Rawr, says the Gnoll. Rawr. Yeah, it's going to be fun. So we've got fur and skin. We have pants and leather. And we do have a scarf, a fancy scarf around his waist. But otherwise, it's mostly like, it's pants, leather, scarf. So the leather is probably going to be a neutral. So really, it's just pants and scarf. And some metals, because we have his hook paw and his sword. And we've got him standing on the deck of a ship. Yeah, that's not the question, Grey Wolf. That's not the question. The question is, do we go Gnoll pelt? Like, The reason I don't even actually, when I plan a color scheme, guys, I do not even consider the metals. The metals are either neutral or they're going to be a yellow. So unless you go orange with copper, but you shouldn't really set up to do that. You should see if that suits, unless you're going to hard commit to it. Like, I think it's an Otter Cleric over with Dark Sword models. Jess, and I think it was Jess, hard committed to copper armor on that one. And she knew that she'd have to work every other color on the model from that copper. But in most cases, you're going for a brass bronze, which is going to be yellow or gold toned metal, or you're going silver, and silver is neutral. It reacts badly with pretty much nothing except for a really bright yellow. Sometimes it can be a little meh on that. So you don't start thinking about your tertiary colors unless you've got a lot of metal on the model, and so that is a consideration, whether you're going bronzy or coppery or steel. But if you're going steel, you can just forget it. It's a neutral. It doesn't even play. It doesn't matter. You can put anything with it, and it's fine. So start always with a model that's going to be a principal color. And for the Gnoll, we could just go browns and yellows and tans like I am with my Gnoll bust. And in that case, it's like then it counts kind of as a yellow. Actually, let me go fetch her. So hold on. Use her as an example. But yeah, when you start a color scheme, you should not be thinking about your metals unless your metals are a primary player. So Gnolly, right? I went brown with her. Even though Gnolls are supposed to have greenish fur, I went brown with her. And the reason that I did, even though it's a golden brown, technically it kind of would count as a yellow, kind of a muted yellow. But the reason I did that is because I wanted options. And if I chose a brown to start with, I could go anywhere from that. Any color. I could have thrown any color onto her and it would have worked fine. I knew I wanted the reddish mane, and I knew that would work fine with a lighter brown because there would be contrast. So, hey there, Bob and Julie. So, when you are looking at your Gnoll and we are making this choice, if we decide to go with that sickly yellowish green that Gnolls are, old school Gnolls are supposed to be, I think nowadays they actually are more brownish. I don't remember. That is going to be our principal color. Like, we have immediately limited our options by choosing that because it is such a strong color. It doesn't matter that it's fur, it's still a color. And so that means that we have to work everything from this if we use it, as opposed to going with a more brown Gnoll, like Gnolly, and having more options. So these are the things you think about. Ideally, when you're starting a color scheme, you think about the consequences of your actions. Because starting with this, and people don't, they think, oh, I'm going to use Gnoll pelt. They do it, and then they're like, oh no, what color do I use with this? Right? So that's a question. Now, can we mitigate Gnoll pelt and make it a little bit more neutrally? Yes, we can. We can shade it with something, like russet brown, for example, and... let me see. Oh no, my Assyrian sand might be in the other room. Oh, all my bone colors. One second. I'm just silly today. This is the problem in having two painting desks. Whoop. So, if we're going to highlight this sucker with something more neutral, we go with creamy ivory or Assyrian sand. So if we do this, we can still get away with a greenish tone pelt, but we're going to play with it and make it a little less green. Now, the downside of doing this, so the upside of doing this is that we maybe open up a couple more color options. We don't go as full green, right? We actually maybe mute it out a bit, and so we open up a few more options. However, this makes another problem. We will not be able to use any bright colors because these guys are going to make this more muted. It's going to go more brown. It's going to go more washed out. when you use these colors for highlights, and when you use this color for a shadow. So it's going to do that. And that means that all your colors are muted. And that means that you have to, all the colors that you choose from that point on have to be at least a little muted, or they are going to fight. So no bright colors. Now that's not a deal breaker at all. It's just something, again, that you need to think about when you're choosing color schemes. And it may be useful for you at this point if you get a bunch of these handy little Bristol or watercolor cards that I like so much. Little trading cards, artist trading cards are what they're called. You can get them in watercolor paper, and that takes our paint just fine. But this is the point where you might swatch it out. So maybe we'll do that. Or the pants, yes. Yeah, and it means we also would probably want to mute our NMM gold if we used NMM gold or brass. We'd want to actually darken it down. Right, but it does limit your options. So, like, that's something I like to talk about because it will limit what you do, or what you should do, if you want a good color scheme. Correct. Gnoll pelt is a little muted, but it is vibrant enough to still be, you can get away with a brighter color using just Gnoll pelt. Hold on, let me shake up Gnoll pelt a little bit. It's definitely a muted olive, but there are definitely gradations of this. It's like, there we go, much more solid. So let's do this. So if we do Gnoll pelt, because that's pretty bright. Like, see how bright that is? That's pretty saturated. Oh, but why would you when you could put stripy pirate pants on an Gnoll? Why on earth would you go that way? You could do stripy pirate pants. So, and then let's do this. Hey, New and Code, it's good to see you again. Thanks for the resub. Hey, if you do one more month, I have to sing the double subversary song. So now let's do a section over here. Let's add a little bit of russet brown. Add a little bit of our Gnoll pelt. Probably want to do another layer of Gnoll pelt when that one's dry because it is kind of see-through. I think I want Osirian sand. I just like Osirian sand lately. I really need to order like another big batch of it. I mean, be inventive. I guess it depends, right? If you're a Gnoll pirate, is the kind of guy who he's just like a midshipman and he's really not, you know, at all an interesting character in your campaign. Although, why on earth would you have an Gnoll pirate and have him not be an interesting character? That's what I want to know. So, got that, and then we do this to kind of get an idea how these are going to mix. So like that is more what we're looking at. We still have that heart of green, but we also are going to be playing with it a bit. And I mean, we don't really have a triad for Gnoll pelt, but if you're looking for one, then you probably want to go with a greenish brown or olive color, like a drab, possibly. Anyway, there we go. So that's more of how we do that. You need some stripy pirate pants? Well, I'm sure you could find them online. Yeah, good. It usually does like work itself out. It's just how long do we wait, right? So, very different appearance. Let me see if I can find a color. Sadly, I like to work more saturated, so I honestly don't have a lot of green browns, but I might have, yeah, actually I do. Gutter slime, or gutter grime. Is that one of science fiction colors? I forget. One of the RVE colors? So gutter grime is actually a really, really good shadow for this. And it's an olive. You could also probably use muddy olive. Oops, that was a lot. Gloob. Gloob. It was so excited to be used that it just had to gloob everywhere. There. Good morning, basement. We are swatching some colors. I don't think I've actually done this on stream before. We're swatching out some options for our Gnoll if we choose to use Gnoll pelt. There are a couple different ways to go with the Gnoll. So, and then the other way to go would be to grab like a lemon yellow or something of that sort. Bring it up a little bit more saturated. Or NMM Gold highlight actually would be a good call for this. But since it's greenish, I'm going with the greenish color. Oh, good. Excellent. So it is available. Well, great. Then I don't feel bad about using it. There we go. So there's two different ways you can go with this color. And then we'd probably go up to white on both. You could also do the Osirian sand over here. Although, again, it would kind of mute out a bit then. You wouldn't get as golden of a color. Let's just put a little bit of white over here and a little bit of white over here. I just want to see. I do this because I want to see the whole range. Kind of get an idea. Gonna get just a little bit of this Osirian sand and blend it out. There we go. All right. So those are our two potential swatches there. You can see how one kind of like goes grayer, even though with that same midtone. It goes more muted. It doesn't stay as vibrant. And the other one is more wholeheartedly into that green. It's hard committing to that greenish Gnoll pelt. And I mean, you can do any combination of this, really. I could have started with brown and brought it up with yellow. That would give you a slightly different, take. But this is just really to illustrate that what you use for shadows and highlights will change the color. It will change the color. And it'll change the effect of the color. Now, I tend to go more naturalistic, so I like this side, and that's probably the side I would have gone. But if you guys want to do a bright green Gnoll, I essentially will try to utilize colors that will minimize that just a little bit. But I can do that, certainly. Remember, this is a main fur color. So if we're going to do this, everything else, every other color we grab has to work with it. No Basement Forge. This is a artist trading card, so it's actually watercolor paper cut to a card shape, which I really like. I use these all the time to do kind of test swatches on, or I'll draw if I'm trying to illustrate something for a tutorial. You guys will probably see me do it actually on the $2 tutorial, which should be out today or tomorrow. I have to swatch today for that. You like the right side? I'm seeing a lot of calls for the right side. So yeah, watercolor cards are really nice because it's a thicker. You can see that edge. See how thick it is? There it is. So I really like these for doing kind of just test colors, test swatches. If I'm trying to demonstrate a texture or something, I like to use them for tutorials. Stuff like that. Yeah, everybody else seems to be going for right. Yeah, everybody else is going for right. Okay, so cool. We will go with the right side then. We will go with this triad. And also when you're trying to create your own triad, if you want to see if the colors blend together nicely and give you a good effect, this is a good way to do it. It's just a little card. You can buy a bunch of them for very little money. And then you've got kind of a record, right? I mean, it's easy to throw these into a card binder then with some notes on what you did. So it kind of creates, hey, Jess Miniature Painting, welcome. So this is how I often will work. And I actually do keep, when I do a swatch that I like or a demo that I like, I do keep them. And, getting a card binder and organizing them is on my list of things to do. Because then you've got it right there. You can even sort it by subject matter, or you can sort the pages by colors, whatever you want to do. Losing the mic. That's not good. I can lower it just a little, but I don't want to mess with it right now because it's all pretty locked in. Don't really want to mess with the mic now. Could be because I was doing this. That happens. Yeah, it's just voice. You're going to get some variance, Robin, depending on if I'm doing this. But because I'm doing this and this a lot, you are going to get some fade. It's not technical. It's just my mic is unidirectional to cut out background sound. But that means sometimes it fades just a little bit lighter if I'm not projecting. That's cool. Thanks for the raid, even though you have to raid and run. I know I'm always doing that. Yeah. Part of that is that it's Friday and I'm a little tired. So when I get down here and I start talking like this, it's not as loud as if I do this. But yes. All right. So let's go with this then. Let us do it. Let us do it. So for those of you who are new from Jess's raid, we paint a different model a day. We got a 6 model rotation on this show. And the last one we just finished was actually Crimson Herald. This guy, he's a Reaper Bones Black. And he's pretty cool. So we worked on him for since we have a 6 model rotation, we often only touch on each model once a week, or even a little bit, obviously 6 models, a little bit longer than that. We do this every weekday at 11:30 a.m. USA Central Time. But we did Crimson Herald, and actually this was a limited palette study. I used only 6 colors on this for this entire model. Everything intermediate, like every intermediary shade or highlight is actually a mix. So we use some of the colors from the Gloom and Grave set to do this. Actually, it's a great set. So yeah, so this is the kind of thing that we do, and we do some, yeah, I'd say high-end tabletop or low-end competition type paint jobs in this stream. But we certainly welcome beginners as well. Like if you have a question, no matter how obvious you think it is, ask it anyway, because we get a lot of new people in the stream. And if you're thinking the question, chances are there's at least 5 more people in the chat who are also wanting to ask that question and are just too shy. So don't be shy. Please ask questions. And we're going to start our Gnoll with our 3 colors that we just determined. After we swatched them out, we decided to go there. And the reason that we're using that green is that old school Gnolls were supposed to be kind of a sickly yellowish green, and our art director at Reaper is an old school D&D person. So Gnoll Pelt is that color. So we're gonna take it a little more natural though, by shading it with some brown and highlighting it with a creamy color. Oh yeah. Oh, is it all on his end? Interesting. If you're not, yeah, Quindy, if you're not hearing a sound change, then my mic is fine. I was going to say, it shouldn't be that terrible. Quindy is the filter, so if she can hear me and I'm not, and she's not getting any, if anybody in the chat can hear me just fine, then maybe it is on your end, Robin, but it's also possible that I'm just like not projecting right at the mic as much. Although I have a very good mic. All right, so let's get this Gnoll Pelt out and get our shadow color. Now we're going to do some intermediate mixes here to make these colors go better together. Whenever you create a triad where the and by triad I mean mid-tone, shadow, and highlight colors, whenever you create one where the colors are very different from each other, always do a 50-50 mix at either end, a half and half. So I'm going to do 2, and I'm going to do mixtures. And that's going to help me blend. Yeah, it's a weird one, right? Like that's why though, Julie, is because Ron is a huge like first edition D&D guy, and in first edition D&D, Gnolls were described as being a sickly yellowish green fur. So we have a sickly yellowish green fur for Gnolls. It also makes a great highlighter for other olives though. Like if you're working with a darker olive or even a medium color olive, this can be a great highlighter for it. And if you're working with yellowish greens, this can actually be a good shadow for it. So, all right, so now we've got 4 drops in the middle, 2 and 2. And you can tune this because the idea is not just to have 50% of each color of paint, but to make sure that these colors here on the sides come out to about 50% between each of these main colors. And that won't always be the case when you're doing a 50-50 mix because some colors are just stronger than others. They have a better diffusion value is actually a technical term where the pigment diffuses faster and is stronger in the resulting mix. And that is an actual thing. You'll have encountered it if in, your grade school, you ever tried to mix red and yellow to get a good orange, and you had to add so much more yellow than you did red to get a good orange. So you'll get that even working with MSP. You're going to hit that where you'll mix, and maybe in this case, I expect the russet brown to completely overwhelm the Gnoll pelt, because russet is so highly pigmented and it's got very, very strongly pervasive pigments in it. The oxides are very powerful typically. So with that, I expect this to be somewhat overwhelming. Well, except that, goblins were orange, kobolds were red, right? Back in the day. Everybody had a clear color identity. Weren't hobgoblins orange too? I thought they were. Maybe they were orangey gray. Maybe they were greenish gray. I can't remember. That was a long time ago, and unlike Ron, I do not go back to first edition. I'm a progressive edition kind of girl. I mean, I loved second edition. That was most of my formative D&D playing experience. I swear I had those books memorized. But I feel like the 5th edition is actually an excellent merger of all previous editions. Yeah, exactly. See, and that's just because the russet is really, really strong. Those pigments, they have a lot they pack a lot of punch, those oxide pigments. Now, this one is much better. This is, I feel, halfway between with Osirian Sand and the Gnoll. So that's nice. Now, also remember the other thing we can do. We're going to mix everything about 4-1 to start with. But the other thing that we can do is that we can decide if we're going to start dark or start in the mid-tone. So if we want darker fur, then we may want to start with like the darker brown green and go up from there. But if we want more of a mid-tone to lighter fur, then we probably want to start with our basic green. Either one is an acceptable choice. Obviously, you can paint your Gnoll however you like. But if you start a model or section of a model with a dark, dark color, it will be harder to build highlights, and the colors will appear more dark, more kind of washed out. They won't be nearly as bright. So if we were not comfortable, see how I'm going to add more Gnoll to this. Now we're at about a 2-1, and we're getting a little closer. That's a little better. That's like a nice kind of dark olive, but it's still really dark. So I feel like I'm going to add a couple more. Now we're going to go up to 3-1. Grab a little bit more water. There we go. That's a little better. So now we're kind of up to kind of a greenish khaki color, which is kind of pleasant. In fact, I like it so much, I'm thinking about just touching this green with it. So I tend to do mixing back and forth to bring colors closer together when I'm working with where I'm creating a triad. So I can essentially take just the little amount of brown on here and mix it into the Gnoll. It won't change the color immensely. It shifts it a little darker. It'll give it slightly better coverage because the oxide pigments here have better coverage. And I'm feeling pretty good about this lineup here. And I think I might add just a tiny bit of the green out here as well, just to shift this just a little bit more into line with that last color, and maybe even take this a little bit lighter. So back and forth, and I'll just create this nice line of colors that all work together really well, because a little bit of like the previous one is mixed into that one, and you know, it all just kind of works together at that point. It's a good tactic when you're using 3 colors. When you're using, I usually recommend not to try when you're doing mixes, don't use any more than 3 colors. The minute you throw that 4th color in there, you're gonna lose it. Everything's gonna start turning into mud. Unless that 4th color is like pure white or something similar. Or pure black, but again, that's going to kind of take things the opposite direction. So there are reasons that using black can be problematic, or using black in mixes can be problematic. But So this is a pretty nice roll, actually. And then we'll grab our russet brown and we'll do a pure russet brown back here to make sure we've got enough difference. I like to have all my colors mixed up before I start, because if I'm going to be doing all this fur, I know that I want all of them to be open at the same time. I'm going to be trying to finish a lot of areas. I've got my little block here with poster putty on it. I'm actually going to mix up this poster putty and make sure that it's nice and fresh and sticky before I stick the Gnoll on it. Kind of like silly putty, you have to knead it for a little bit to get it to, optimal stickiness with most good poster putties. This is a mixture of, I think, an Elmer's poster putty and blue tack. So most poster putties you can kind of mix. All right, I think that's good. Get that down on this little block. And these are the little 1-inch wooden blocks that you can get at any craft store or order real cheap off of Amazon. They are very easy to get. You get a big bag of them, and then you have infinite little bases to put your miniatures on to paint them. Poster putty also being inexpensive. Some people use double-sided tape. I never liked it that much. I feel like double-sided tape can kind of rip up, or it can, it just isn't quite as good as the poster putty, in my opinion. But, if that's what works for you, use it. All right, Gnoll is on his platform. He is ready. He's ready to be snarly. So let's try something. Let us try starting with the lighter green on one paw and starting with the darker olivey tan color. Once the cat hair gets on the tape, it's no good, huh? I'll make a note. I do not currently have a hair producing entity in the house except for myself and David. So all we have to worry about is human hairs and lint at the moment, but that will not always be the case. Alrighty. And looking for, there we go. Yeah, you are almost there, Crowley. Awesome. Yeah, Shilohs don't really shed when they're puppies. It's only once that adult coat comes in. So let's try this this color on one paw. You can see how very green that looks over the light gray. That is the Bones USA color. Those little toesies. And we could go a couple of different ways with this Gnoll, since they're fictional. There's really no right or wrong to how you paint them. We could go lighter with his paws, more like a traditional, canid, although wolves are not canids. Hyenas are not canids, rather. But we could also go dark with his paws. Or we could just go green with his paws, but that's not nearly as exciting. No new miniature humans here. Oh, okay, but Agent Marvel had one. Yes, that makes sense. Yeah, grats on the baby. Misunderstood, because I was that 3-year-old kid who was like, I'm never having kids, and I stuck to it. But congrats, Agent Marvel. It is good that some of you choose to carry on the gene pool, right? You wouldn't have tattoos on fur. If you want to imply that this is actually skin, then you could do tattoos. But on a furry creature, maybe if the fur is really, really... the problem is that in order for a traditional tattoo to work, you need to have skin, right? You need to have the skin showing with no fur growing over it. Otherwise, what a Gnoll would probably go for is scarification, which would be actually carving, designs into his flesh. burning off the fur, you know, throwing ash in there, you know, generally highly painful, but it's a gnoll. So you could go with that, but I don't know if it would carry, right? Because again, we run into the too much information to convey just on one model. It'll probably look like you meant to do tattoos. So if you did do that, I would just imply that this is actually flesh and that the pelt is only on the upper part of the model, and not really go for fur texture on the flat areas, essentially. But the other thing is, there's really not, I mean, with all this fur here, there's really not a great place for a pirate tattoo unless it's on the bicep. So you might instead, yeah, I don't know. This is rough because all the options for like freehand or really decorative work are all down low. And that's not usually what you want to do. So let's start with the dark color over here. See which one of these we like better. Now, technically, you could eventually overcome the difference between base coating with a light and base coating with a dark. You can certainly put enough shading and washes onto a model to overcome a light base coat and make it look more like you started dark. You likewise can certainly build up enough highlights to get close to the effect of starting with a light base coat, although you probably won't be able to get all the way without some serious light glazing, which is fraught with peril and difficult to do because light colors tend to show every brush stroke. So you have to be very careful when you're pulling off the excess water after you glaze if you're doing a light glaze. All right, so those are our two colors. This dark one is the Gnoll pelt with the russet brown in it, and this one is Gnoll pelt, pretty much Gnoll pelt. It has a tiny touch of this color in it, but mostly it's Gnoll pelt. So which way, let's see, so there's that paw. And there's that paw. Which way we want to go, guys? But yeah, tattoos won't show through fur just because they're under the skin and the fur covers the skin. And usually you don't see the skin color through the fur unless the area is very, very thin. So this isn't, if I was looking to do tattoos, this isn't the model I would choose. I would instead do some cool fur texture. Now you can do body paint. You can always do body paint. You like the left, you like the darker, not as green. See, Ron, nobody likes your green gnolls. I love to give Ron shit. The darker one. Yeah, say darker or lighter if you want. That way we're, because on the camera I know that the left foot is the darker, but it's actually his right foot, and so that just gets us into that who's on first situation where everybody's like, what? Wait? What? Let's actually put a little bit of our Gnoll pelt on top of this little dark foot and see. I'm going to illustrate this for you guys. So we're getting, we're putting some little highlights on with our, notice what I've created, by the way. I've created a pentad. Those of you who are on my Patreon, patreon.com/paintingbig, have seen in my $5 color workshop tier that I've started talking about pentads. And pentads are just a 5-color instead of a 3-color approach to MSP. And pentads are actually the way I tend to paint. And I've felt that that MSP works, very good in pentads for quite a while. But triads made more sense from just a salability and line development perspective. So that's why we did that. 3 colors is a lot easier and also a lot easier to kind of like create more colors around than 5 colors. So we've got our highlights now on the dark foot. But notice that even though I'm highlighting with this green, it's not nearly as bright. Now let's take this dark color and shade our green paw with it. or like paw. With only a 1/4 inch of hair, you can't see the ink. Yep. Exactly, Clavicus, exactly. Well, that's why, you know, a lot of show dogs have tattoos, but it's under, even on a Doberman with a super, super short coat or a pointer, you're not going to see it. So the only probably like scarification or body paint would be if you wanted to add that kind of thing to him. That would be what you do. So now I'm going to shade with the color that we base coated with over here. And remember, I haven't thinned these colors a lot. So they are coming through with their true personalities. But because we started with a different color, the effect that we're getting is different. So this is what I mean when I say starting with a darker color really is going to give you a different effect in the end, even using the same colors between two different areas or models. If you start with the dark on one and start with a lighter color on the other, you will have a different effect. So now you can see them getting closer together as I add these shadows, right? But they're still pretty different. You definitely get more of the green on this one. And like I said, I could come in and cover up a lot of that green, but then why did I use it for a base coat? So, and now let's try putting a layer of highlight. Actually, let's darken down the totally between the toes with the russet brown. Then let's start going up in highlights. You'll be able to see the difference. And as you can tell, this isn't taking a lot of time. It's pretty convenient. You know, he's got his paws pretty close to each other. They're sculpted the same, so it's easy to do a quick layout and comparison, just like, you know, we were using a card for it before, but now we're using the actual model. And should we decide that we prefer one to the other, then we can easily repaint the leg that we didn't like. So if we did decide to go lighter, though, what we'd have to do is actually probably put a light color, probably our highlight color, over this entire paw, and then repaint it with the brighter color. Because if we trying to make this color go over the top of this paw to get this effect, we really need a lighter undercoat to get that effect. So deciding to go with this color would mean that we had to repaint this entire paw lighter, maybe even a light gray like this if we wanted a perfect match. Well, you could, Dabber. You could. I mean, you could do whatever you like, really. Some of us who love realism would be like, Brar? But then we're just gonna like think that it's magic body paint if we think about it that much. Maybe I overthink these things. But I like to inform my decisions via reality. That's just me as a painter, though. You can go as fantastical as you want. Although if you did do like magical tattoos, I would expect you to make them glowing or otherwise indicate that they are magical. And that's a whole different can of beans now, isn't it? But yes, you can do whatever you want. I mean, it's your Gnoll. With fantasy creatures, I just always believe that keeping a certain level of realism helps them look even cooler. It's kind of, I will call it the James Gurney approach, who is the guy who did Dinotopia, as you'll recall. And he painted dinosaurs, but he painted them in a very realistic manner. And so what it did is it sold you on the whole idea that there could be humans and dinosaurs living together because everything looked so realistic. So, and he did a book called Magical Realism, kind of to sell that viewpoint. That you want to use realistic techniques, maybe even especially on monsters, to, if you want to really sell that they could be real. So it's different schools of thought, and you know, you as a mini painter or an artist will decide what one works for you. Or you'll just paint however you want to, and that will be perfectly valid. These are just cool things to think about. All right, so let's shove this out of the way here. I'm going to do some highlights. So you can see still that this paw is still greenish. And they're getting closer together, right? Because I shaded them with the same colors. I highlighted them the same. Yeah, realistic fantasy. I really like realistic fantasy. Yeah, there was a lot of, like, hypothetically, a lot of feathers, considering birds grew out of dinosaurs. But yeah. No, they're always, as the technology gets better, there's always just fascinating stuff in the dinosaur world, right? It's very, very cool. Paleontology is terribly cool. Alrighty, so then let's put a highlight just down here, a little highlight on his toes to bring them out, since they're really facing the light. I'm not going to bury my previous highlight, just going to come in with a little bit to bring out that detail. And this is just assuming that we're not going to take the feet dark or light, that we're keeping them one color. At any point, we could choose to go a different direction. I like to use highlights on areas just where there are nice details to pick out, as well as areas that are catching the light. So these toes being perpendicular to the light source, they're all going to catch the light. And there's a tendon going down the front of each one, the top of each one. That's useful to use to pick out details. Then when you get up a little bit, you can choose more what to pick out here and here and here. Then on the back of the hawk is actually fur, coarse fur, so I can go darker with that. Can actually do some of the, could do a glaze of the russet brown. Or I could make that fur lighter. Either way works great. So there's darker. Let's go dark on one side and light on the other. Again, just to compare. Get this fur going on. I've got a little bit of a mold line there I need to take care of, but I'll take care of that before we decide finally which of these colors we like better. So that's a dark hawk. On this side, let's go lighter. Lighter with our fur. So we'll definitely have one light and one dark take on it. And when you do these brush strokes, try to kind of brush in the direction the fur is growing. Even if you only leave a couple of brush strokes that suggest that, it will add to the texture effect. All right. There we go. So we've got a lighter and a darker fur. I'm going to just take one final highlight, or at least one more highlight, because I have the capability. I'm going to highlight this just a little bit more. There, white fur and dark, light fur and dark fur. Let's take this highlight and put it on the other toes, and we'll be getting close to figuring out which one we really like. So this is going to get a lot bigger of a highlight. This highlight will be more the size of our initial highlight over here, and then the next up color will be the highest highlight on this area. And then as I get these highlights around here, I'm going to use brush strokes that imply the fur growing together. So now we're getting that. See, very different, very different. We've brought these up with exactly the same colors. The only difference is the base color and the amount of area that is covered by each selection. I'm going to take the final color here and put it just a little bit at the edges, just like I did with that, like that last color on the other one. And do my little highlight under these scratches on his legs. Then we'll look at both. We'll get close, hold on. There we go. All right. I can still bring that one up a little bit more. So things have changed, haven't they? Oh. The look has definitely changed from each foot. Notice how adding highlights to this has washed out that green, made it less obnoxious. Hey Twisted Oma, this is Hackle Blackhook Gnoll Pirate 338 by Julie. Green users in the chat. So I am going to grab a little bit extra touch of this highlight, add in just a little bit more on these toes. Make sure that it's kind of at a same level as the other one is. And then we will look at both and assess. Ooh, except I missed a spot here with my base coat even. Didn't go quite up as high underneath that pant leg as I wanted. Yeah, since we started darker, our highlights are not as high, right? So look at them separately. So there's Gnolly Pirate, foot one. Foot one has the dark fur on the back, greenish brown, definite. Then there's Gnolly number 2 with the greenish foot. Weirdly, I am starting to prefer the green. Right. Who knows how it does with the rest of it? Exactly. Right, if you wanted to do a bunch of Gnolls, doing this with your first Gnoll would be kind of nice, because then you've got all the colors you need for both, right? So you're just shifting. You're just shifting it. So with one Gnoll, you just use, those 4. With another Gnoll, you use these 4. And both are perfectly fine Gnoll alternatives. So consider the fact that with a lighter color, I'm bringing the highlights up lighter. With a darker color, I'm not bringing the highlights up as light. And the reason is that this is fur. It's probably dull fur because it's a Gnoll. It's a shaggy hyena man. And so chances are it's not going to be very shiny. So I do not bring the highlights up as much on a darker color. There is Gnoll foot 1. I should put little claws on him. This is Gnoll foot 2. This is more like a good plague Gnoll kind of color, right? I'm going to use my lightest color and block in a couple little claws here. He does have little tiny claws coming off of his paws, although they're a little bit indistinct. It's hard to hit them. Claws, claws, little tiny claws. Doesn't take much, just a little hit of an off-white color. You don't want to use pure white down here for these claws. They will stand out too much. You just need an off-white. In this case, I'm even using the fur highlight color, but because of the shadow, they work out just fine. And this is why when I put the shadow around the bottom of these toes, I made sure to paint over all these claws, because using that russet brown meant that the claws will now stand out. There. So let's do that now. Paw number 1. There's Gnoll paw number 1. Dark. And light. If I do the dark one, I'm going to be more limited with probably going with a lot of like kind of muted neutrals, more muted colors on the rest of the model. With this, I would feel pretty confident going with a fairly bright red for the sash. I could at least highlight it up to a fairly bright color, but if I go with this, I'm gonna have to mute that red a lot. And I'm kind of thinking like blue black or purple black for the pants at this point. I may do stripes. And the silver or steel and gold will be some of the brightest stuff on the model. Because his weaponry is always important, especially if he's reaching for you with his hook paw. And the face, I'll probably use slightly lighter colors on to bring out the expression and pull the eye upward. I liked the brownish green one at the start, but I actually like the kind of like plaguey green one. Diaspero with the troll. This is a Gnoll, not a troll. The darker foot. Lots of votes for darker foot. You don't like your green Gnolls, huh? But yeah, it's really, I mean, it really doesn't matter so much, Julie and Bob, that, you know, as far as what else I pick, I will have to work, just like I mentioned at the start of the stream, whatever I choose, that or that, I will still have to work all the other colors off of it. And the difference, it won't be easier or uneasier. It'll just be, if we pick the more browned out color, then it's going to mean using very more grayed and browned out other colors on the model. Oh, the floor is just going to be neutral brown. It won't even make a difference, Grey Mouser. It will actually make a slight difference because since I'm using like russet and higher, it will be like a very neutral color that'll make everything else harmonize. When you put a warm dark brown like russet brown into a model's frame of reference, you help. It's a helper color is what I used to call them. Because colors like this just tend to make everything harmonize a little better. If you're using a cold color scheme, I would use black and brown instead. If you're using a warm color scheme, then I would use russet. And I highlight russet by mixing in driftwood. 9162, one of my favorite browns. To make it look a little weathered on the floor here. The deck of the ship. That's partially why I shaded with russet anyway. I knew I was going to probably go this way. I'm going to put further shading around his paws. I think trolls have always been green. Am I wrong? Were they gray? I don't remember. First edition stuff. I don't have any of my first edition books anymore. we go. So there, block in the floor. So notice how, now this is actually an excellent study, and I'm glad you suggested doing this, Mouser. But now it's changed everything, hasn't it? It's changed the colors. It's changed how the colors look. They look a lot closer than they used to be because now we have something dark to put them against. I don't use yellow in the wood. I use this. Where is my... It's around here somewhere, dang it. There we go. I use driftwood to bring this up. It is kind of a yellowish gray to brown because I like to fade out things. But first we're going to use black and brown to actually bring in shadows. Although actually, you know what a great color would be to use shadows here? It would be Death Knight Black. Adding in some blue. Blues and yellowy greens and blues tend to really like, blue purples tend to really like each other. They're partners on a triad. So actually, let's talk about color wheel too. Starting a new model is always a great opportunity to talk about color theory and the decisions you make. So right now, we're in the realm of yellow-green. And we're actually in the realm of yellow-green adding red to it. If we use the brown. Notice how similar these two colors are. So essentially this is why these windows are in your color wheel, so that you can kind of slide over and say, all right, what about if I add yellow? What about if I add blue? You know, and you can continue going, adding white, adding black. Sometimes black will shift the color in an unexpected way, but here it just makes it a little darker because yellow plus black equals green. So really, our yellow-green is closest to a yellow-green with red added to it, this one. Whereas this other foot is probably halfway between this and adding white. Let's see, do we have a better... Yeah, we can go over here. Well, that's more of a shade, tone, and tint. They don't do the complementary add in here. But yeah, so yellow-green, and then if we look at our different things we can build off of yellow-green back here. Let's go back. Out. There we are. So these triangles and these squares and rectangles help you look at color schemes. But the most useful, I think, is the triadic. So here we have the yellow-green. And then what is its triadic friend? The blue-violet, which is exactly what I was saying that we should use. A dark blue-violet liner. Death Knight Black is a dark blue-violet liner. So we're using this to line means that we're choosing something that harmonizes very well with our yellow-green, no matter which yellow-green paw we use. They both count as yellow-green. So that's why I'm choosing Death Knight. It's a very intuitive choice for me because I really like triadic color schemes. And I know that those colors harmonize well together. So I'm going to use those to shade. I'm going to use this Death Knight Black to shade our Gnoll feet around the edges, and I'm going to do the wood as well. All of this stuff's going to change the way that everything looks. This is a great opportunity to explore how these different colors look different as you fill in the stuff around them. We might even do the pants and make a decision. Who knows? I could keep going this way, and we could keep like kind of changing the look of things. You don't have to be super, when you're doing lining like this, in between I'm lining the wood boards in the base, you really don't have to be precise with it. You can be really sloppy because you're probably going to come in and highlight those little boards anyway. And when you do that, you can clean up any kind of roughness that you left. So I'm thinning this a bit. It's probably about a 3-to-1. And I'm kind of painting it in just to give a bit of shadow around his paws. Putting a shadow around the feet of the model, just a little one. Even just a line, but if you can kind of like see how the model is crouching and if there would be a shadow like there, it can help add weight to your model. It can really look like your model is really there. It'll add realism. And then this paw, likewise, just a little bit of shadow around it. And you want to put pretty heavy shadow between the paws, right? Because of the Gnoll himself standing up there. So don't forget to do that if you're going for realism, because that makes a big difference. It looks very natural. The Gnoll is casting his shadow now. And again, if you get a little bit too enthusiastic with it, it's not a big deal because you're going to highlight these boards anyway. So you can clean up what you've done. I just took a little bit of water in my brush, just a tiny bit, not a blob of water, but just dampened the brush. It kind of brushed against the outer edge of that indigo where I put it down, and that resulted in a better blend there. It's the quick and dirty blend. When you're dealing with thinned paint that's going to take a little bit to set, you can come in with a damp brush and blend it out. And here we're going to have a little bit, he comes back, he's got his tail there, so this shadow is going to go a little bit back. And again, a damp brush, not a super wet brush, but just damp, just with a little bit of water in it to blend out that edge if you want to blend. And then once you've got that shadow, you can evaluate and say, okay, does that look good? And if it does, you can further darken it down as you think the situation warrants. Like I might want to make it just a little bit darker all across the middle. So I'll come back in and add a little bit more of a darker black indigo color, black violet. There. So now we've got a bit of that blue violet. And when you first put it on, if it's thinned, you're not going to see the blue violet coloration very much. It's going to be very subtle. If you continue to build it up, the color will be stronger. Like you can definitely see kind of that purpley blue color right back here, right? Because it's I built up a couple layers there, so now it's definitely reading stronger. It's still going to be fairly subtle, but it's there, and it harmonizes well with everything that has gone before. Right, exactly. And that's one of the big things, right, with colors in general and painting in general, is people forget that whatever you put next to things is going to change the look. Now that we've added that dark shadow, the feet look lighter again. For a while there, they didn't. They were almost like, they kind of were blending in a little bit more with the base, but now they both look lighter again. And the more of a dark shadow we put there, the more contrast we put right next to them, the more that will happen. Now, if we bring up the highlights on this base, the whole thing will shift again. And that's where you make the call of, oh, I'm not going to go really light with these highlights because I want these feet to still look light. So I'm going to keep the base darker. And you can also work with that if you take a darker brown, like say you take your russet brown, which is what we started out with, and you add in, say, some blackened brown, and you go in and you hit all those little lines, or you even do a wash if you want to, although I'm not a fan, but you can. Or you even do a wash, right, and hit those spots. What I like to do is I like to hit the edges of the boards and make them appear a little more weathered and leave the majority of the board the color that I want it to stay. So I'm going to do a 3-to-1 with my driftwood brown 9162 and our base coat russet brown 9199. I really like mixing these two colors together, both for wood that's starting to fade out and also for leather. Dark leather. I really like doing it. It gives you a nice neutral leather that doesn't fight with anything. So let's mix this up, highlight the base, and kind of judge then. And hopefully, as I'm going, you guys are definitely forming some opinions about which paw you like better. Actually, let's put a black rim on the base too, just to get even more contrast. Because right now we've got no super darks, and that's going to change the color again. This is the crazy part, right? Every time you add something, it gives your eye another reference point. Right now, all you've got are kind of mid-tone colors and a medium dark color. And you've got some lighter highlights on the feet. But you don't have anything that's really close to black except for the lining around the feet and the shadows. So let's actually put a black rim on this base and see how it changes things. It should make everything else look lighter. I like to put black on my bases. David is like not all about it, but I really like a black rim around it. to make the model stand out a little better. And I'm putting pretty much full strength pure black on here because this is where the paint's going to rub off. So full strength is your best bet. And often I will even put 1 or 2 coats of sealer on it and sometimes come back with an additional coat of black on the top of that. 1 second, I just spotted a mold line and must remove it. You can tell the paws are different, can't you, Pendrake? I can, for sure. Did I take my knife into the other room? I might have. I might have to use a file. Let me just take a second to get this sucker filed down, folks, then we'll go on. There we go. Much better. There we go. I really need to, it's not like I don't have more than one hobby knife. I really need to dig one out to live in here. But yeah, can you not tell the paws were different? Like, I think they look quite different. You can really see it on the back because we haven't done anything with the back of the paws yet. Other than blocking in either a darker or lighter fur color. There. And I always paint the bottom too because I'm going to sign it eventually. So I always do my initials and the year that I finish a piece once I'm done with one. I kind of blame George R.R. Martin for this because he always was like, you have to sign it or I don't remember who did it. And Ron kind of was the same way. It's very convenient when we have a signature or initials and a year on the bottom of a model. So I've gotten in the habit. So yeah, that way I can put it on. Usually I use a light color or white. Yeah, they're quite different if you look at it on a big screen, Pendrake. But that's an excellent point. Remember that the smaller the area you're dealing with, everybody, the harder it is to make a color stand out. Whether to indicate that it's different or to just actually make the eye catch it. Things tend to blur together and look the same, even when you're trying to do like eyeballs or whatever, and you're trying to make them like glowing in red. It can be very, very hard unless you really pop the contrast. And these feet are not, you know, they don't have popped contrast. We painted them with the same 4 or 5 colors. It's just we shifted what our base coat was. And this is just our proof of concept to figure out which way we want to go with Mr. Gnoll. And since it's almost the end of the stream, I'm going to actually finish out the edges of the base here. And then we'll have you guys vote, and that is what we will go with next stream. And then I will show you how to go in and swiftly change the colors when you have done something like this. This guy is pretty simple, so he's probably not going to take us a long time to paint. So I really don't mind going more into the theory with him. In fact, if you're trying to learn color theory better, and kind of, you know, understand how this all happens, how the colors shift as you fill in areas on the model. This is like, this kind of simple model is actually a great place to do that. When you start trying to do that on a model with all sorts of things going on, you get distracted by all the things and you don't necessarily look too hard at like the colors and how they're differentiating, right? But when you've got a simple model, then you can set it up and it'll be very clear to you. Heavy sienna from WizKids. I don't know what it looks like, but if it's a sienna, usually that's a reddish brown. Is it a reddish brown, Grey Mouser? dark reddish brown. So is ruddy leather too light? Because the best reddish brown that's probably close to a dark sienna. Yeah, this is definitely the reddish brown we've got that's closest to like a dark sienna brown. An actual like regular burnt sienna would be chestnut brown 9071, and that's brighter. It's definitely lighter and brighter, but it makes a great highlight for ruddy leather. I've got it in here somewhere, I think, but I've forgotten where I put it. There, we're almost dry. All right. So let's start to... I was below on it to dry it faster. Dry faster! And you can see Julie's delicate little signature there. Guthrie. Julie also understands the signing of the base, right? My sticky tack has totally preserved the details. There. We'll probably lose a little bit of paint off the bottom, but that's all right. I can touch it up later. So let's thin this a little bit. I think I actually need a 4-to-1 with this driftwood and the russet brown, because russet is so strong. Oh, it's a base. Well, wait. Base coat? Or actual base, like plastic. They were looking for a plastic color. Okay, well, okay. What they call a base. Every Master Series is a base. They're calling it a base paint. That means it's the first color you put down, and it's meant to have a pretty heavy coverage. That would be 9109 Ruddy Leather. They're not teaching you to fish. They're handing you a fish. That's what that means. They're saying, here, this paint is formulated for base coat, instead of teaching you how to use any paint as a base coat. Any Master Series paint can be your first color. Doesn't matter. That's why I'm talking about like using lighter colors or darker colors as your base. Because you can take a color that we say is a highlight and you can use it as a base color, absolutely. Same with our shadows. Yeah, right. See, I don't like that. So, because you get better results with 2 thin coats for your base coat. You'll get a much smoother result. So, these are not stupid thick. Master Series are not thick paints. But you will find that 9109 has very good coverage anyway. I don't see the point of a super thick paint when you can get coverage without it. But that is my philosophy, since I designed the line, you know. And who knows, Ed may want to take us that direction eventually, since I'm no longer doing the design. Who knows? He always was attracted to putting together a paint system, to that idea. So, you can never tell what can happen down the road. So lightening up the edges. And I'm also going to lighten the edges where the boards meet, because that's where you're going to get weathering. That's where water is going to seep in, the edges of these cut boards, right? You're going to get a little bit more wear where edges protrude. And this is where, if your lining has gotten out of control, you can touch up. Now, you may end up having to... there we go. First coat is a difference. Good, good, good. Yes, yes, yes. Good. Yeah. Yeah, I just feel like, I mean, I'd rather teach you guys, like, how paint works. So you can use any line, any color, and get the result that you're looking for. I'm going to grab this black indigo. When you do touch-ups, especially along like boards and stuff that are kind of irregular, it's easy to lose that line that you put in. So sometimes you have to go back and touch up your touch-up. And that's just the nature of painting. Don't get frustrated with it. Use it as an opportunity. It's just an opportunity to practice your lining. There, much nicer. Because we all have blurfs and we all screw up stuff. Hey there, Siege Forge Tower. How's it going? We're experimenting today, Siege Forge. So these two paws were painted different colors. Or should I say different, here we go. So we started out creating a 5-color transition from mid-tone to darkest shadow to lightest highlight. And we decided, we were looking at our Gnoll and we weren't sure what color we really wanted him to be. If we wanted a more vibrant kind of sickly greenish color, like the old first edition Gnolls were supposed to be, which was essentially Gnoll pelt. This is that color. Or whether we wanted something a little more natural, so we mixed in some of our russet brown. So this paw was started with this color, and this paw was started with that color. And so we're essentially filling in the base now to see how it changes the color of these paws before we make a final definition of which one we're going with for the rest of the Gnoll. So if you are interested in color theory and color selection, you may, and the way that colors change as you put other things up against them, highlighting and shading even, you may want to go back and watch this in VOD. If you guys, anybody who's come in later, because I really go into it like this stream has been very focused. Often we get distracted by different questions and we go down bunny trails. I've been really focused this stream because this is important stuff. You could probably treat this stream as a class on choosing colors and adjusting colors, like easily. It is a paint formulation difference, Jack. It absolutely is. It's because of the base they're using in the Army Painter paints. So it definitely, it's the type of resin in the paints and the chemical composition. So it's actually the foundation, like the skeleton of the paint that is affecting that makes Army Painter paint not stick to the plastic as well. That said, I wash mine. I make sure to wash them with some dish soap and hot water before, and then I let them dry before I put paint on them. I find that lets me actually apply my paint pretty thin. It actually, I don't have to do anything different than I would do on a model that was metal unprimed or resin unprimed. Yes, yeah, it is the resins. It's the whole composition of the paint, the core. The pigments don't affect that, but the basic chemical composition of the paint will absolutely affect how well it sticks. Adhesion was one of my primary concerns with Master Series because I was sick of using paint lines that didn't stick and that rubbed off easily. So with Master Series, we definitely went toward the adhesion side of things, even though it cost us in coverage slightly. And that's the thing, is there's a sliding scale, and a lot of today's miniature painter paints are geared toward coverage, which we decided to go the other way. We decided to give you better transparency for more versatility and better adhesion so that it would stick to the model better. So there's a sliding scale on these traits, and you sacrifice a little bit of one to get a little more of the other. And so the fact that other companies go more toward coverage means that you have to thin them a lot more to get a good wash or a good, glaze or anything like that. Anytime you use a thinned application, you have to do a lot more to those paints to get them to that level. And they also tend not to want to stay there. They tend to not want to stay in solution. And that's because of the resins that are used to get that thick-bodied, high-coverage paint. So there's all sorts of things that go into that you sacrifice a little bit of that for a little bit of that. You get a little bit more of this, but you lose this, It's all a dance trying to figure out the best mixture for you and your painting. So that's why Master Series doesn't have like absolute coverage, but when you try to do layering or glazing or washes with it, it works like a dream, and you don't have to add very much water for that. Yeah, I mean, we don't have suck coverage, don't get me wrong. It just was not the priority. We want decent coverage in our colors, but it's not like getting coverage is not the end all be all for us. We want your paint to work in a whole bunch of ways, however you need it. When you thin it for airbrushing, we want it to stay in solution. When you do a glaze with it, we want you to be able to hit that paint consistency pretty fast and without having to like mess with it forever. You know, when you're trying to build a wash, we want you to be able to do that super easily. And the transparency of many of the colors works with that. Now, they are trying to work more with different resins and pigments that kind of give you the best of all worlds, but there's just a basic physical barrier there between coverage and translucency. I mean, they're two opposite sides of the coin. You want both things for miniature painting. You want your first coat to definitely be solid. You know, you want to be able to get colors down on the model quickly and easily. But you also don't want to have to sacrifice everything else and make everything else harder for yourself. So that's the way I was thinking when because I used to have to thin, like some of the paint lines I used to use were very thick and they had great coverage, but to get them to do layering, I had to spend forever getting those things thinned down to the right level. It was forever. There was so much water I had to put in. And that frustrated me because it also, when you do that, it impacts adhesion. It impacts how well the paint stays on the model. So all those sort of things went into the creation of Master Series, all that sort of thinking. I'm going to bring out the tips of this pretty light. I mixed in a little bit of my Assyrian sand. So let's bring out these edges. And then let's kind of look at our paws again. Anyway, I get passionate about like paint design because I think that Reaper is a very different animal in today's market. I'm very happy that we're a different animal. It definitely makes us unique. And the more you paint and the more you experiment with different techniques, the more you start to appreciate the versatility. Vallejo Whiz Kids. Yeah, everybody else, that's another thing actually to bring up. Reaper's the only miniatures company that produces its own paint in-house. Many of you already knew that, but we do it from the ground up. We mix every batch ourselves on site. Those who've been to ReaperCon and toured the paint department know. And that enables us to adjust and to fix issues and to, replace bad bottles, pretty much instantly. If we run out of a color, or if a color goes out in a bad batch, say you forgot to put matting agent in it, so it was glossy, although we have safeguards against that, but say you do it. If you get a glossy bottle of something that's not supposed to be glossy and you complain to Reaper and Reaper tests that batch and figures out that it's a bad batch, we can just toss that batch and make another one that day and send you a new bottle tomorrow. So there's definite advantages, although it was very expensive to set up. Ed will tell you that. He's like, if we would have known how long, how much it would have cost us to set up a paint department, we would never have done it. Yeah, it's cool to talk about. Alrighty. So now we've got kind of a good setup for this, for Gnoll. Oh no, Gnoll scratched off on the front. This is the problem. The bases always take a beating. Boop, boop, there. So now that we have kind of a start on our basing, now that we're getting the idea of where we're going, now that we've got some shadows, I'm actually going to put in just a little bit of extra shadow down these boards down the middle, I think. Then I want you guys to make a decision. I want you to try to kind of look at it fresh. Take a quick look. And then tell me which paw we're going with. As it's the end of the stream, and today we did so much awesome stuff on color theory, color choice, awesomeness, super awesomeness we did today. So, what's it going to be, folks? Brownish paw or more greenish paw? Can we put up a quick poll, Wendy? Dark paw or light paw? Which way? Which way are we going with our Gnoll? Whatever we choose, we're going to repeat on the rest of the model, and it's going to influence all the other colors that we put on this. We're just going to go dark or light, because right and left everybody can get like confused on. So it's a dark or light. The lighter one is the more green one. The darker one is the more brown one. Now, right now, you're right, and I agree with you completely. The lighter paw is looking good because it contrasts better with the base. But we can totally darken down the base if we want to get that with this other paw. So that's totally. So we're going to do a poll. I want you guys to go and poll it for sure. There we go. What Gnoll paw should we paint the rest of the Gnoll in? And don't worry, we're going to paint over whichever paw we don't like. Sword versus hook. Dark is sword. Light is hook. Dark is sword. Light is hook. Got it? Dark is sword. Light is hook. I want to see you voting. Voting, everyone. Tell me which paw we want. Vote for the paw. Vote for the paw you like. Ooh, dark paw's winning right now. Pretty substantially. People like dark paw. More brown of a Gnoll. I mean, it's still greenish, right? So it still fits that sickly yellow-green descriptor of the first edition Gnoll. Here we go. We've gotten a fair amount. This is 25 people so far have voted. So if we've got like 50, if we've got 50 people in stream right now, that's 50% response rate. That's not bad. Yeah, go ahead and vote in the poll. It should be at the top of your chat. You should be able to kind of click on it and it should roll down. I was going to say it's a decent amount of votes. Whenever you can get 50% of your like watch base to actually respond and vote on something, I think that's pretty good. We got 27 people. Get us up to 30. Get us up to 30. You're claiming defeat. You like light paw? Well, at least you know what colors I used. So maybe I'll take a picture of him and the palette and actually put up a PDF on my Patreon that's free for you guys. That's actually not a bad idea. That way, if you go over to patreon.com/paintingbig, you can get a picture of both paws and the colors, and then you can decide what to paint your own Gnoll. Here, let me get a good picture of his paws. There we go. Got to get some darks in there. I like to get a good picture of the actual model. Trying to get good lighting while we do that. There we go. There we are. I think I got a good one. Yes, thank you, everybody. Yeah, we got 33 votes. Thanks. And Dark Paw wins. So the Sword Paw wins by an overwhelming majority. I'm trying to get some good pictures here. Yeah, it should be easy. I might have to do it over the weekend because I have to get my $2 PDF up today. But I'll try to get a free Gnoll PDF, Gnoll Colors PDF up for you guys. All right, and our timer is almost done, and then we will essentially end the stream. So thank you all for coming. We talked, again, this is, if you're coming in now, I have to say this was very much like an official class today. Pretty much like an hour and 15-minute long class on choosing colors, mixing colors, and, responding to the changes that happen when you shade and highlight colors. Like, seeing how adding shadows and highlights actually will significantly change the look of your base color. When we did using the same 5 colors, we did 2 different paws on this Gnoll. One starting with this color, pointed at the sword. One starting with this color, but using the same series of highlights and shadows. And then we chose which one we liked better. But either of these is a cool design, and so both would work. Yes, I hope you enjoyed this. I know I stayed very, very much on track today. Very focused. I like that when I can give you guys an actual class, essentially, sometimes in a very focused manner. I know a lot with Twitch, we tend to not do this sort of thing where I stay on target. But But yeah, so it was nice to be able to do that for you guys. And if you have missed this stream and are interested in this sort of thing, please go watch it on VOD on Reaper's Twitch. Later on, it will also be posted for posterity on Reaper's YouTube. So, and I love Gnolls, so I was happy to be able to talk about this stuff. We also talked about the color wheel a little bit. We need an Apple emote. Yes, indeedy. I'm just isolating these photos so that I can use them in the little PDF. I'll probably just do a one-page PDF about the colors. And then you guys will have it. You'll be able to, utilize it if you wish. It'll be free for download. It'll be public on patreon.com/paintigbig, which is my Patreon. I do put up free stuff every once in a while. And then there's a ton of extra value if you become a subscriber, of course. If you become my patron, I appreciate all of you. I have super fun doing PDFs and videos for everybody every month. So yeah, thank you everybody. I hope you had a good time and happy Friday. So have a fantastic weekend. All right. And we'll be back on Monday doing, another new one and we're talking a lot about colors on this one too with our friend the Ogre. Remember him? So we're doing a lot of humanoid skin tones this week, actually. And in this rotation, in this particular model rotation, I'm really happy to see it. I like to do different stuff, so this is super fun. This is currently 11:11 where I am, which means it's 1:11 where you guys are. Have a fun lunch, have a fun weekend. I'll talk to you on Monday. Bye-bye.